Hello, everyone. It's amazing. We're nearly at the conclusion of this series that we began at the very beginning of lockdown. And there's an item that I've been meaning to share with you really from the very beginning of this series. It's something which really helps us to date the synagogue and to place it into the 18th century. It's not something which is very spiritual, but it does help us, shall we say, understand the setting of the synagogue. And that feature is at the very entrance to the doors of the synagogue itself. You can see here below this metallic object, which is a boot scraper. Literally, somebody would come here to scrape off their boots before coming inside. And of course, these boot scrapers remind us that London was a very different place in the beginning of the 18th century. Out on the street, there would have been all of the muck from all of the horses and everything that would have been up there. But before entering the house of God, one would clean off their boots, would make sure that they were clean before entering indoors. Of course, horses feel like something of the distant past, but actually over the past few years, horses were not entirely absent from the synagogue. Something that I remember at the very beginning of lockdown is that I would hear the beat of the horse as they walked down Heneage Lane, just down by the synagogue, as the police would be doing patrols during lockdown throughout the city. And it was one of those moments, hearing the hoofs along the pavement, of almost really imagining what it would have felt like being at Bevis Marks during the 18th century. And then during my wedding, which I was so blessed to celebrate here during one of the breaks between the lockdowns, I actually arranged for a number of horses to come to the synagogue for a horse and carriage at the conclusion of my wedding. And we brought the horses in through the main gate, and then my wife and I were able to leave, really in a very special way as part of that celebration. Thankfully, on neither occasion did we need any use of these boot scrapers, but it really felt like we were back in the 18th century. And so something which actually is happening as part of the project reflects actually the fact that this was an 18th century building living in a 21st century setting. And that's because as one enters through the gates at the front of the synagogue, one goes down a slope. And that slope is there because, of course, London today is higher than it was in the 18th century. It's something like a foot every century is added to the layers of London as things are destroyed and things are replaced. The street level keeps coming up. As a result, we've had this problem of problematic levels and access issues into the synagogue. And so as part of the project, we're slightly raising the layer of the courtyard. We're adding ramp access to make sure that the site of the synagogue is as accessible as possible to as many people as can be. So behind me, you can see where the courtyard has kind of sloped down, but these new slabs have just been laid at the new higher level. And this will now be the level of the courtyard throughout, and making it as, shall we say, as even as possible throughout one's entrance from the gates to the synagogue itself. So here you can see these slabs that have just been laid, and they've been laid at the new level of the courtyard, and you can see how much they've been raised from where the level had previously been. And this will now be the new level that will be throughout the courtyard, making it as even as possible throughout. And so that's one of the ways that we're ensuring that the synagogue will be accessible to so many people with lifts and ramps, while at the same time preserving that quality of the building that really allows one to experience the fact that this is a building from the 18th century that is still alive, still in continuous use. And so I look forward to welcoming you to the synagogue to experience all that was and all that is today. Thank you.